So I've been hearing some rumors about how Israel Adesanya might be coming back a lot earlier than we think. This is a very interesting situation because obviously UFC 300 is getting closer and closer, and I think all of us want a card that is just full. Like, I don't know, maybe three title fights, and every single fight is between big names or something along those lines. I mean, that's what I'm hoping for. Like, if you're gonna try to make the biggest card ever, there should be just like it should be that crazy. Now, I'm not a fan of Israel Adesanya. I've never been. I've always disliked him. Like when he first came around, I thought he was cringe, and then it's just his head. This guy's ego and his head has just been growing in size. And to see someone like Alex Pereira come into the UFC and actually take him out was just like that was I was it was one of the craziest things I'd ever seen, and the amount of like anger I had when he got knocked out in the rematch, and then seeing everything that happened with him shooting arrows at Alex, and then making fun of his child, and then hearing just all the announcers just kiss Israel's behind, acting like they're not seeing what he's doing, and just the amount of bias towards him has just been so ridiculous, especially too when you add the whole racial stuff into it between him and Driscus, and just a lot of other stuff that was going on, like everything around Israel Adesanya. Man, it's just I don't know. He really either makes you like him or hate him. Not in the same way of some other fighters, like maybe Conor McGregor is just a little bit more. It's easier to like him than it is Izzy. I really don't understand why people like him. But either way, I think it's a very dumb move on his part to take years off. The older you get, you do get more knowledgeable. You do get more wise. Not a lot of fighters know how to convert that into their fighting styles, unfortunately. You can't, like, the way you fight in your 20s and the way you fight in, let's say, your 30s should be totally different if you've actually learned. Like, you shouldn't have the same exact fighting style. Like, I think a lot of older fighters should be incorporating more of a defensive style. Like, they should learn head movement. They should learn potentially even a Muay Thai guard, honestly, and getting more defensive, being more intelligent on how to keep the pace of the fight, how to, um, how to do things like that. It shouldn't just be like, when you're younger, it's like, okay, you're like a pit bull. You're like, okay, the fight starts, you just sprint at your opponent, and then you just throw all your punches or have everything behind it, and you're always trying to be in the dominant position. But if you're an older fighter, there's a lot of ways you could take advantage of stuff like that. Just the intricacies of how to maintain your energy in a fight, how to keep control mentally. I mean, these are things that young guys, yeah, they may have the power advantage, they may have the potentially the stamina advantage and things like that, but a lot of those things can be overcome. But for someone like Izzy, I mean, he's already in his late 30s, and if he takes off like another couple years, then he could be coming back potentially in his 40s at this point. And I mean, he probably has better genetics than most people when it comes to longevity. I mean, you can clearly see that he's not really out of his prime. He just kind of got chess matched against Strickland. And then when it came to Alex Pereira, that was kind of I mean, it wasn't really a chess match. It was kind of in my opinion, kind of a lucky punch. I mean, you could clearly tell when he threw that punch, he didn't even know it landed. And he said that in an interview as well. So that fight could have really went any direction. That was just like a couple guys throwing haymakers, and then your punches just so happened to land. It wasn't really a chess match or really anything. I think that's why so many people want to see the rematch, or the third fight, because it's like, both fights were just so like back and forth, right? Like Alex almost gets finished, and then he gets saved by the clock, and then all of a sudden he's the one landing on Izzy, especially when he was like losing most of the fight. and then the rematch after Alex, the first round was kind of like nothing, and then Alex was winning the next round, and then next thing you know, he gets caught and he's out, and it's like it was weird because like he was winning and then he lost, and I mean a lot of these fights that we watch as MMA fans, usually you can tell who's winning, or someone will lose and then they slowly like they start taking over or something. Like there's always you kind of know who won. Like, all right, this guy edged him out, or he was losing at first, and then he started kind of getting his feet under him, and then he started piecing the guy up. But in these fights, it's all over the place. It really is almost like an amateur MMA fight where you see a guy and I don't know, he has stage fright or something. He doesn't know what he's doing, and then he's getting beat up, and then all of a sudden the third round he gets angry and just knocks the guy out with like a random flying knee. It can be like that. But to get back on track, I mean, this whole thing with Izzy, I mean, from what I heard, if he does come back, there's rumors that he may fight Chimaev, and if he does that, that's it for him. If he comes back, and he's already on, he lost Pereira, then he won, then he fought Strickland, and then he lost that. So that's two fights lost. I mean, if he were to get an impressive win, he could go right back into middleweight title contention. But if he were to go up against Shemaev, he would 100% lose that fight. I mean, Izzy has no ground game like at all, and I know people think he does because he's fought against guys who do have ground game. But you have to realize that Izzy is one of those rare guys who has the mental, like he's able to use his aura against people. Like, there was a point in Conor McGregor's in his history where if you were to fight against him, you could just tell that his personality was coming through. And whenever he would fight people, those people would be like immediately like already on the back foot, and they would just be like sitting there defending against themselves. And a lot of people don't understand how like that mental, I don't know, it's kind of an aura, I guess I would call it. Like Ronda Rousey had that. When she would fight opponents, they would go in there already on the defense, already on the back foot. And it's a thing that happens with certain superstars, where you're fighting these superstars, you just don't fight the way that you normally fight. And so these guys are kind of already defeating you because you go into some sort of like stardom or something like that. Or like they're like starstruck the minute they're in there with these guys, or they're so angry at these guys like Connor for talking smack that they're not able to mentally get into that mindset that they need in order to fight like they usually do. But Izzy is one of those guys. He's able to put these people into a state of being that puts them out of their normal element. I mean, you look at like when he beat Robert Whittaker, for instance. Robert Whittaker he was dealing with some ring rust. No one ever talks about that, but he hadn't fought in like a year or two, and I'm telling you, ring rust is real. Colby, that whole situation, he looked like trash. I mean, ring rust is real, and same thing happened with Robert Whittaker in that fight. The second fight with Robert, I personally thought Robert won that fight. He got takedowns and he was landing a lot of jabs. It's very interesting how many jabs he landed. Vittori and all that, I mean, he didn't really do a whole lot. You would think Yoel Romero, if he went in there and just decided to actually wrestle, he would have dominated that fight. But, Yoel's, he's definitely a character. And even if you give him the recipe on how to win, he probably won't act it out because he's just a character, unfortunately. But a lot of these guys, when they fight Izzy, they just don't think about taking him down, even though that's the best way to beat him. I mean, look at Robert fighting Izzy. What did he do? I mean, he would like go in there for like a half. He would go in for like a single leg, and then the minute he didn't get it or got some resistance, he would immediately give up. And it's like if you're fighting a guy like that, of course you're gonna get resistance. You're gonna have to like go in for the leg. He's gonna resist, and then you're gonna have to transition into a double leg or put him up against the fence and then go for a double leg. I mean, you have to put some energy into this. You can't just like, oh, I'm just gonna shoot for a single leg and then I should immediately get it. I mean, this isn't the days of Matt Hughes and Randy Couture and the old school days where the minute a guy would shoot for a double leg, he would immediately get it. Like, because back then, like, no one had, like, really, only a couple guys knew how to really wrestle. Most people, I've watched so many fights where a guy would just, the minute you come in for a takedown, the other guy's already falling backwards. Like, it was just like they had negative takedown defense back then. But nowadays, especially, almost everyone knows how to like sprawl. If you shot in on a takedown, everyone would sprawl on that. That's why you look at these Dagestanis and they don't really shoot. They like kind of like dive at your legs, and then but the goal is to push you up against the fence, then take you down, right? Get the body lock and then take you down from there, and then keep you there. So I don't know why no one has adapted this. I mean, you could clearly see that if Izzy were to fight Chimaev, that's what would happen to him. Totally dominated. Chimaev would just, as long as he was fighting smart, because obviously when he fought Gilbert, he was fighting not so smart, getting into a slugfest with him when he never needed to do that. But if he did fight intelligently, like he did with Kevin Holland, he would just grab Izzy. Even if he shot in and Izzy did sprawl, he would probably then just take the back from there, and that would be the end of the fight. Or he would, if Izzy tried to push the head down, then Chimaev would push him up against the fence. Then he would get the body lock, take him down, and then the fight's over. But with all these losses that Izzy has taken from Pereira and from Strickland, I think that aura, that stardom bubble, I think it's finally been popped. We'll have to see, but if it truly has been popped, then that means that extra kind of like mental, like put your opponent into a daze type of thing. Let them like basically you're the one flowing, and they have to try to find their own rhythm. Like the minute the fight starts, you're already in your rhythm, and these people are in your rhythm, and they have to find a way out, which most people like obviously don't. But I think that bubble has been popped. Like, we saw that. Like the first time Ronda Rousey got kicked in the head by Holly Holm, like she was just losses after that. Like it wasn't like that bubble was the main thing that was getting her the win, was that kind of like that charisma, and opponents would lose to it. And same thing with Conor. Conor, when he had that, every time he won, that little bubble got bigger. And then when he became the champ, that bubble was like probably the biggest we'd ever seen. He would just walk in there and guys would just be forgetting how to fight, essentially. Same thing with Izzy. He had that same kind of, he gave off this personality like he was like the LeBron of MMA, and he's just going to throw a kick from some crazy angle and kick your head off. And a lot of guys believed it, and they would go in there and they were already, they talk a game, oh, I'm going to do this and do that. And when they're in there, they're just up against the cage with their hands up, trying not to get kicked in the head, instead of fighting the fight that they would normally fight because of that aura, that stardom stuff. So I don't think Izzy really has that. I think that was a huge weapon because, if you look at his career, there's been a lot of fights that, like, if things had gone left instead of right, he easily could have like lost that. Like you look at like Calvin Gastelum, for instance, and the amount of damage he did to Izzy. That was before he had that big stardom bubble that really gave him a lot of advantages when he was champion. And he wasn't really able to do much against Vettori in either fight. Those fights were just kind of a waste of time. The Yoel Romero fight again was probably the worst fight in all of MMA. That was not impressive. His first fight against Whitaker, yeah, he did knock him out, but at the same time, Robert Whitaker was coming off like 2 years of ring rust, which is like massive. No one gives enough credit to the mental game. The mental game is the most important part. And, if you got a guy who's been winning regularly and then you have a guy who hasn't fought in years, trust me, the guy who's fought regularly has a major, major advantage. It might as well be a steroid advantage, honestly. Not even getting into the whole gyno situation, why certain fights he has KO strength and other fights he's kind of just throwing pillows at people. That's a whole nother situation. And just his career itself, it's not really that great when you really look at the quality of the wins and like what was really going on. Can he actually go up against a guy like Chimaev, who's arguably probably, when it comes to the middleweight division, that guy should easily be he should easily be a double champ. He's just got great kickboxing. He has like superhuman wrestling abilities. I mean, he really is what an MMA fighter should be. Him and the Dagestanis, they are actual MMA fighters. They have advanced grappling. They have, Islam has pretty good kickboxing, and can a specialized kickboxer fight off like an actual MMA fighter? I don't think so. He doesn't even have that charisma bubble, that aura anymore either to even help him with that. So I don't think he'll take that fight. I think Izzy, he's a lot of things, but he's smart politically. He understands what's in his self-interest and what isn't, and he understands what his value is. So I don't like, he's similar to Sean O'Malley. Like they understand those intricacies of MMA, of sports in general, and because of it, I don't think he would ever take a fight like that. So this isn't you know this isn't the end of Izzy, as long as he doesn't take that fight. Because if he takes that fight, that's his value will just drop off to nothing. Like 2 losses in a row, and the next people are going to start saying, the conversation will go, instead of him making it back to middleweight champion, they would start thinking, oh, is it time for him to retire at this point? So he really is like one impressive, well, not really an impressive loss, but if he got KO'd or dominated, then people would start talking about that. Well, next thing you know, he's in his late 30s and he already has this great career as a middleweight champion, as a dominant middleweight champion, and so maybe it might be time for him to retire and and become hopefully not a commentator. but do something. So that could be it. So I don't know. I don't think this is the end of Izzy, but if he takes that fight, it will be. So all right, guys, I'll see you on the next one.